This is the Gaahleri Mobius 0.3, and this airbrush presents me with the conundrum. You see, Gaahleri sent me this airbrush for review, but when someone reviews something, you're being presented with the viewpoint from the reviewer, biases and all. Gaahleri is a new player in the airbrush market and has expressed their desire to enter the artist space, who demand the most exacting and precise of airbrushes. The Mobius models are their first attempt at entering this competitive marketplace. Gaahleri says their namesake comes from the word gallery, which is the marketplace for professional working artists wishing to sell their artworks to the public. During this video, you'll see me create artwork intended for gallery display. First, I'll try a quick freehand portrait to get a feel for the brush, then after I'll move on to the gallery piece. So what's the conundrum? You see, my opinion of the Mobius is based on aspects I find during use, and in the case of the Mobius are both positive and negative at the same time. Let's start with the negatives, as I prefer to end on a positive note. The machining of the trigger levers aren't as smooth as other manufacturers, and in my unit had a certain degree of roughness to it. It was easily fixable with a bit of metal polish and a rotary tool, but for some buyers this may discount it from consideration. I also polished the valve rod to reduce airflow start when the trigger is depressed, but this was done to suit my taste and isn't an actual flaw. But I did uncover a trigger flaw that, while easy to work around, just might remove the airbrush from purchase consideration. You see, the shape of the trigger is tapered, and it causes the lower end to cause the trigger lever to rock ever so slightly, thus pulling the needle back when you initiate paint spray. The easy workaround is to simply loosen the needle, then press the trigger down, then tighten the needle. This will fix the issue, but will add a tiny amount of free play in the trigger. So it isn't a perfect solution, but many hardened Steenbeck users have been using their H&S airbrushes, which had a similar amount of free play in the trigger. So let's move on to the positives. The finish of the Mobius are quite attractive, and the few gold accent parts add a nice touch of flair and appeal. The airbrush utilizes a very unique nozzle design that is set to lower the required PSI needed to spray, and in my use I found this to be true. They also tout flexible needles which are said to be forgiving of bends, but I've yet to test that to any extent. But the biggest positive is the price. At the time of this video, the Mobius 0.3 is $64.99. So here's my take on the airbrush. After my working fixes, I found the airbrush to be smooth and sprays very well. I found the ability to render fine lines just as good as many of my more expensive models, and the handling of the airbrush was just perfect. No issues were experienced at all during use. So where do I stand on this airbrush? It does have the issues I mentioned, but in providing feedback to Gaahleri, they told me they were going to revise the parts in question, and that a new batch of airbrushes slated for February release would have polished or chrome lever rockers. As for the tapered trigger design, I will send them an email today and wait for their reply and relay their response in the comments below. I'll leave the review with these notes. If you're expecting a perfectly machined airbrush with zero issues, I recommend you look elsewhere for your airbrush needs. But if you don't mind a little polishing or tweaking, then take a look at the Mobius line. I think they represent a great value considering the price point. So I pass the conundrum to you, and you make the choice. As for me, I'm going back to finishing my snowy owl painting. Enjoy your spraying, guys.